Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this traditional Sunday community chatter and fundraising stream. As always, I will present first news segment, and after that, I will join community chat and I will take my time while scrolling through comments so that I will react on as many comments or questions as I can, and I will try my best to be informative in my response. For the new members of community, I will say that this is not just a big community chat, but also fundraising, as I call it, for next week. Usually, goal is to reach to raise $200, so that for next week I will have some funds to rely on and to be less stressed. We did manage to reach target twice since I start this fundraisings, but maybe we will do it today also. Anyways, I'm grateful to everybody who supported and continues to support her. If you want to join this fundraising, you can use a PayPal platform or Boosty platform to donate to the project. Also, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, dear friends, or on page on Boosty. Of course, that will count too, and I will be tremendously grateful if more members of our community will join Patreon, because unlike donations, when you just don't know will you have today any donations or not, on the Patreon and Boosty, I do have some understanding of monthly finances because subscription there is monthly, isn't it? So it makes life a little easier that way. And also during the live stream, because I'm streaming on both my channels on YouTube and Rumble, you can use a super chat feature on Rumble, or Rant as it's called there. And also you can become premium subscriber. Everything counts. And Anya, my wife that always assists me, will let me know when there is donation or a super chat. Yesterday late evening, there was donation from a member of our community, Susan, 1,600 rubles, which is about $20. So let me count this as a beginning of the fundraising, this $20, and express my gratitude to Susan for assistance, for help, and attention. Thank you, Susan, for your yesterday's donation. And well, that's been said, dear friends. I guess I did the intro. I said everything. Links, dear friends, are on this video in description box and will be in the pinned comment of all the platforms that I mentioned. And well, that's been said. Let's start with the news segment now. It's a Sunday, so I'll try to be fast, dear friends. So RIA Novosti is reporting, based on Russian Defense Ministry, that overnight 80 drones were shut down that was launched by Kyiv regime with assistance from NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. I can give you some specifics on this yet another attempt of NATO, I will say, to strike deep into Russia. 30 drones were, and I say NATO, dear friends, because as you know, without NATO providing flight path and targeting data to these drones, Kyiv regime would not even dream about launching these drones. They just have no capabilities of that, right? So flight path targeting data is coming from the NATO, and this is a NATO strike, effectively, right? So 30 drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region, 15 drones over the Crimea, 12 drones over the Smolensk region, 10 over the Kaluga, 5 over the Novgorod, 3 over the waters of the Azov Sea, 2 over the Leningrad region, and 1 each over the Oryol, Ryazan, and the Rostov regions. As a governor of the Leningrad region, Alexander Drozdenko reported, the fire broke out on the territory of the Kinev plant due to failing drone debris. It was extinguished. There were no casualties as a result of this situation. In response to attacks by Ukrainian armed forces on civilian infrastructure, Russian troops are striking with their high-precision air, sea, and land-based weapons, as well as drones, exclusively at the military facilities and enterprises of a Ukrainian military-industrial complex, Russian Defense Ministry reported in latest update. Quite a quite large-scale attempt of NATO and NATO proxy Kyiv regime to strike deep into Russian territory. And when it comes to these terrorist attacks, and it is a terrorist attack, I believe, well, there was incidents on railways, by the way. So we have this report, for example, also from RIA Novosti, that explosive devices found on railway tracks on Ariol region, and there were casualties as a result of explosion. So explosive device was detonated on a railroad track on Ariol region. Governor Andrei Klitschko reported on his Telegram channel. We have quote here: the residents of the region explosive device were discovered during an inspection of railway tracks in Ariol region. 2 hour deep regret when one of them exploded. 2 people were killed and 1 was injured. And unfortunately, this morning I read information that this third person also died as a result of this explosion. With their lives, these people save maybe hundreds of lives of other people, by the way. Who knows, maybe if not these people, these are heroes, maybe it would be passenger train, full passenger train that would derail as a result of that explosion. So with the price of their lives, they save potentially hundreds and hundreds of innocent civilians. I'm quite sure local officials there and federal officials, governments, federal institutions will do everything to assist their families of this killed personnel. And this is not all, friends. In Leningrad region, there was also derailment of the locomotive on railway. So diesel locomotive derailed near the Semrino station in the Leningrad region. The driver unfortunately died as a result of this tragic incident. Governor Alexander Zdenko reported on his Telegram channel. And we have quote also: inspection actions are being carried out and restoration works is being organized in connection with the derailment of the single diesel locomotive near the Semirino station in the Gachina district. The train driver died. He was trapped in the cabin of this locomotive, and after the derailment, he died in an ambulance. According to Drozdrenko, additional forces will be sent to quickly restore train traffic in both directions. We are increasing, another quote, we are increasing number of buses on the Luga-Gachina-St. Petersburg route. Information about the routes is provided by voice messages at the train stations and stations on the Luga and Gachina routes. The governor specified the region will step up the work of law enforcement agencies to ensure security on the all types of transport. And even though at this point there I did not see statements of law enforcement agencies that this was yet another terrorist attack of Kyiv regime, my personal understanding is that this was a terrorist attack committed by Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. Most likely we will learn some more during the day, and I will share additional information in the next update. Also, we have this interesting news from TASS news agency that Russian armed forces hit Ukrainian drone operator training centers. And as you know, dear friends, drones are playing a critical role on the battlefield. Warfare has changed tremendously due to this new type of warfare, and obviously Russian militaries pay a great deal of attention on neutralizing drone operators of the enemy forces. So operational tactical aviation, attack drones, missile troops, and artillery of the Russian armed forces hit training centers for Ukrainian drone operators and their temporary deployment point of Ukrainian troops. This was reported by Russian Defense Ministry. We have quote here: operational tactical aviation strike unmanned aerial vehicles, missile forces, and artillery of the Russian armed forces groups have damaged their training centers for unmanned system operators, as well as the temporary deployment points for Ukrainian armed formations and the foreign mercenaries in 142 districts. And this is just a previous 24 hours, by the way. So strikes were conducted in 142 different directions, and most likely majority of missiles and drones reached their target, and their strike was a success. Also, Interfax is reporting that Russian Defense Ministry successfully conducted firing of hypersonic Zircon missile during the Zapad 2025 military exercises. A lander part of these exercises is taking place mainly in Belarus, where Russian and Belarusian forces are conducting all sorts of trainings. As you know, dear friends, I reported about these exercises in my previous updates. Although Navy and aviation, of course, strategical aviation included, are also participating. Missile forces also are participating in these exercises. Earlier, I shared with you reports that Russian troops during these exercises will train on the launches of even Oreshnik missile systems. So this is a big deal, I think. And of course, Zircon missile system should not be forgotten, dear friends. This is a missile system that may be less famous than Oreshnik, but nevertheless, it's a hypersonic missile system that cannot be intercepted by anything that NATO can come up with when it comes to NATO's air defense capabilities. So I think this is important stuff. Let me give you some details. The Russian Northern Fleet successfully conducted their practical firing of the Zircon hypersonic missile during the joint Russian-Belarusian strategic exercises Zapad 2025. Zapad word, by the way, means West 2025. The Russian Defense Ministry reported on Sunday, as a part of the joint strategic exercises Zapad 2025, the Northern Fleet forces launched a missile strike on their simulated enemy in the Barents Sea. The crew of their frigate Admiral Golovko carried out practical firing of the hypersonic missile Zircon at the sea target. The Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement, according to objective control data received in real time, the target was destroyed by the direct hit. Noted in a statement, the area while missile launcher took place was closed in advance to civilian shipping and aviation flights. The ministry also added, according to Russian military's information, the target designated for the frigate to fire Zircon at their target position was provided by Tu-142 long-range anti-submarine aircraft of the Russian Northern Fleet. During the Zapad 2025 exercises, elements of protecting coastal facilities and the garrisons of the Northern Fleet, managing heterogeneous groups of forces, whatever that means, by the way, as well as the complex use of high-precision weapons, advanced and modern weapons, and military equipment are being practiced. The Northern Fleet forces are operating in the Arctic maritime zone. The Russian Defense Ministry clarified the strategical exercises Zapad 2025 is being held there from September 12 to 16. Practical actions of the troops are taking place in their training grounds of Belarus and Russia in the Baltic and the Barents Sea, as we all know. So yes, that's the report, dear friends. I think NATO officials, NATO militaries probably are paying close attention to these exercises and all the launches of the missiles that West cannot counter with anything, including launches of their Zircon, right? RT is also reporting that Russian Foreign Ministry accused Denmark of sponsoring Ukrainian terrorism, which is true, of course. And although it's not just Denmark, by the way, it's all NATO, maybe with the exception of one or two countries. The rest of them are actively engaged in terrorist attacks on the Russian Federation. Denmark has shown its hostile stance towards Russia by agreeing to host a weapons production site for Ukrainian military. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said, speaking at the press briefing on Friday, Zakharova condemned plans by Copenhagen to establish a solid rocket fuel production facility for Ukraine's long-range Flamingo cruise missiles, which Ukrainian officials say could reach as far as Siberia, and their facility will be operated by the Ukrainian defense company Firepoint and is due to begin manufacturing fuel near Skystrap Air Base in South Jutland in December. And well, I guess Russia has every legal, I will say, basement to retaliate on this clearly hostile step of Denmark, right? I'm not sure that Russia will retaliate, but I guess some independent groups here in Russia, let's say this way, will try to make sure that that facility will never produce no fuel for anything, right? Or maybe even would not be built. And just as a measure of cautiousness, I will recommend construction workers from Denmark not to go anywhere near to that site. They want to live, right? They want to live their happy lives, and why would they want to become directly involved in hostility against Russia, man? Why would they? They should think, does it worth to be enemy of Russia, really? And let them remember when Russia did anything to harm people of Denmark. What Russia did ever to harm people of Denmark, so that Danish government now is positioning this country as an enemy of Russia. Some questions have to be asked, right? And some answers have to be demanded. But it's up to people of Denmark, up to people of Western countries, by the way. I mean, if maybe they want to be Russian enemies, man, I don't know, right? Maybe they want to see war, full-scale war with Russia. Maybe they are dreaming about it. Who knows? I'm not there, right? But my hope is that the majority of people in the collectivist countries don't want the war. That's my hope. Dutch news agencies are also reporting that, according to Reuters sources, Europe is kind of disappointed by Trump's muted response to a Poland incident with the drones. Interesting, the United States, European NATO allies are concerned about the muted response of American President Donald Trump to the drone incident in Poland, and are beginning to doubt Washington's readiness to protect them from possible threats. Reuters report, citing European diplomats in Europe, Trump's muted reaction was interpreted as another manifestation of his America First policy, which assumes that European countries should provide for their own security, which is, what is wrong with that? Of course, European countries that are tremendously hostile towards Russia should be capable of providing for their own security, right? Because that's how every other country in this world operates, right? They are relying on themselves. But in Europe, there is a different picture, by the way. European countries are this hostile against Russia because they are relying heavily on US. Without US, I don't think any of these European countries will dare to act this crazy against Russia as they do. Am I correct on that? And maybe some awakening is happening among Western elites. I don't know. This episode underlines that Trump, unlike other presidents since Franklin Roosevelt, does not consider European security to be a centerpiece of US security, said former US ambassador to NATO, Ivo Dolder. And you tell me, dear friend, how Europe's security should be centerpiece of US security, and why should US care about Europe, man? In general, I will remind everybody that vast majority of people in US are descendants of the ones that ran away from Europe because they were treated not really kindly by very same generational elites in Europe that are pulling the strings right now. And quite understandably so, many Americans, as far as I can tell, don't like Europe. And they do remember that their grandparents ran away from Europe for safety and to pursue their happiness that they could not in their own countries of origin, right? So if one day US will actually begins focusing on itself and their best interests of its own citizens, oh, that will be a great move for America and for Americans, I think. And when it comes to modern Europe, that is controlled by globalists, mainly, and globalist control regimes, well, they should be responsible for their actions, right? And should not endanger other countries. Anyways, according to the agency sources, similar incident in the past would have prompted an immediate response from Washington. Now, Trump's reaction in Europe is described as a public shrug. According to the agency sources, European politicians perceived their American president's statements with their disappointment, bewilderment, and even anxiety. Okay. A senior German official said to US representatives had discussed the US drone incident with European allies, but appeared hesitant. We cannot rely on the US for anything with this administration, but we have to pretend that we can, he told their agency. A diplomat from an Eastern European country called the US reaction defining silence. So far, the US has not really cheered anyone up. He said. An agency source from Italy, on the other hand, noted that most NATO countries reacted negatively to the US reaction to their incident, but avoided openly criticizing Washington. European diplomats are also alarmed by the fact that the US Air Force did not participate in their operation to neutralize the drones. But the US explains this by the fact that the Netherlands was responsible for the airspace of the Poland at the time of the incident. You see, dear friends, Europeans are desperate to keep US in this proxy war. This was a clear false flag operation with the drones, by the way. I explained my take on the situation quite a few times before. I believe Western secret services orchestrated active work of radio-electronic warfare to divert a couple of Russian drones from their target towards the Poland. They succeed with that, and a couple of drones actually were influenced by the radio-electronic warfare system, NATO radio-electronic warfare system. And when those drones crossed the border with the Poland, at that point, false flag operations main part began, and that is that they took drones that looked like Russian drones, or maybe those drones sometime in the past failed in Kiev control territory and did not get smashed completely, so they reassembled them in certain fashion, and that's why there was tapes on the drones, by the way. We all see videos and pictures, right? Those drones were taped, and since when new drones that are coming out from factories are taped, man? They are not, right? They are not. Tapes might be used, I don't know, exactly for the purpose to reassemble fragments of this drone that maybe failed, right? Anyways, I believe after a few drones of Russian origin, potentially, and this is my guess, by the way, were diverted by NATO radio-electronic warfare system, NATO countries, NATO secret services, then took whatever number of drones they had in their disposal and put those drones in different places all over the Poland. Some of the drones were placed in central Poland, by the way, and that's why Russian Defense Ministry said, guys, these drones only have a range like 700 kilometers. What are you doing? Those drones could not reach those areas that you put these drones, right? it's not serious. But anyways, this was a false flag operation of NATO, European NATO member states, led by British secret services. I have no doubts about that. And the main reason on one side is to keep US in this proxy war, of course, and there seems like at least for now, they did not impress Washington that much with this operation. And on the other hand, they are using now this false flag operation to deploy more and more troops on the border with Belarus and Russia. And simultaneously, they are deploying, by the way, not just ground forces, manpower and military equipment, but they are deploying air force. And that's a key point of this whole operation, to deploy more and more air force in this direction, because I believe, and I expressed my take many times before, that globalist control regimes in Europe are planning next phase of escalation with their massive launches of drones and missiles, with simultaneous terrorist attacks deep inside the Russian territory, during which they will use whatever assets they might have in Russia. They will also try to conduct, very same time, by the way, they are planning something big, so much so that Moscow most likely will have no option but to retaliate hard. But as I said, same time, they will conduct a large-scale cyber attacks on Russia. They might even go as far as to attempt decapitation strike on Russian Federation, to kill political leadership of Russia and military leadership of Russia. I have no doubts that they have this plan in place, right? Will they go ahead with this plan or not? Different topic, but I think they will go ahead with this next phase of escalation, and in short time, in relatively short time. So we are reaching probably most dangerous phase, not just of this proxy war that is waging against Russia, but maybe in history of whole of humanity. That's how much things might escalate, I think. But anyways, let me continue, dear friends, with some other news. And even though Europeans are criticizing Trump and trying to paint the picture that US is not on the board with them when it comes to escalations with Russia, in reality, I don't think this is necessarily the case, right? Some deception operation is going on, I think, in reality, and the US is fully on board with the globalists, unfortunately. And there are many indicators of that, by the way. After all, why Trump authorized thousands of cruise missiles to be transferred to Kyiv regime? I mean, you tell me. If US is not on board with their globalists, then why he authorized 3,000 plus cruise missiles, by the way, to be transferred to Kyiv regime? What the hell? It does not. This move is not something that indicates that Washington actually wants to distance itself from this proxy war or to de-escalate with Moscow, isn't it? I mean, let's be real here. And on the other hand, they're very saying Washington is escalating with Moscow, while higher than even Biden's administration did in economical terms, right? And not so much against Russia, but against Russian allies, Russian trade partners, and so on. And for example, Trump issued the Ukraine conflict ultimatum to all NATO members, and demanded NATO countries to stop buying Russian oil, Russian energy, basically. And also he demanded NATO member states to impose sanctions and the tariffs on countries that are conducting business with Russia. Let me give you some details on that, dear friends. I don't know if you can read on your screen. This is the statement that Trump made, dear friends. I will read it. I will read it for you. Just a sec. So where is that statement? That's it, by the way. I will read it for you and share your take, what you think, dear friends. So Trump wrote on his Truth Social, letter sent by President Donald J. Trump to all NATO nations and the world. That's how this post starts. This is sort of open later, I guess. I don't know. And he's been quoted, "I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing, and when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia." As you know, NATO's commitments to win has been far less than 100%, and this is an important part, by the way. Trump basically is openly saying that, well, NATO is engaged in this war, right? Am I interpreting his words correctly? He's openly saying in his tweet that, as you know, NATO's commitment to win. If you are not engaged in a war, then what you are talking about? What win or lose? But you are mentioning winning because, well, you are involved in this war, right? So this is clearly, in my understanding, or acknowledgement, yet another one, that NATO indeed is engaged in a war against Russia and wages this war. So as you know, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens our negotiating position and their bargaining power over Russia. Anyway, I am ready to go when you are. Just say when. I believe that this plus NATO as a group placing 50 to 100% tariffs on China to do fully withdrawn after the war with Russia and Ukraine is ended will also be of a great help in ending this deadly but ridiculous war. China has a strong control and even grip over Russia. I mean, this is quite something to say. But Trump can say even worse things, even much more inaccurate statements. So, okay, he thinks China is controlling Russia. Unbelievable. So anyways, China has a strong control and even grip over Russia, and these powerful tariffs will break that grip. This is not Trump's war. It would never have started if I was president. It's Biden's and Zelensky's war. I'm only here to help stop it and save thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives, he said. And he went then to talk about that 7,000 people are dying and every week and that kind of stuff. Okay, that's a statement from Trump himself. That's a statement from Trump himself. And I don't know what you make of it, dear friends, but I mean, will European states actually stop buying Russian energy? And it's not just Slovakia and Hungary that are buying Russian oil when Druzhba pipeline is not targeted by Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, but also other European countries, including Western European countries that are buying Russian LNG, for example, right? And they are buying Russian oil and oil products through third parties also, from India, for example. And we are talking about basically all of Europe, right? I remember, if I remember correctly, last month I reported that France alone already purchased, by the way, at the time of reporting or in first 6 months of this year, Russian LNG for, I don't know, $700 million or something, which may not be that big of a sum, but nevertheless, Netherlands, I believe, also buys Russian LNG, and as Spain and other countries. So will they be able to actually cut all the ties with Russia and to completely avoid buying any energy source or anything whatsoever that directly or indirectly linked to Russia? I don't know. We will find out. But if European elites will go ahead with this, then they will definitely accelerate tremendously downfall of European economies. That's just too obvious, isn't it? Also, interesting report, dear friends, from Axios that allegedly Trump now doubts the ability of his to influence Putin. Source with their direct knowledge told this resource, Axios, And okay, I don't know if we can trust Axios or not, but question is why Trump ever think that he can influence Russian president, man. Maybe this overwhelming narcissism that he's influenced her. Maybe this arrogance, ignorance plays some role, and he actually believed that he can influence Russian president. But I don't know. He should not. He should be a little more realistic in this matter. Personal relationships. I mean, he might have a good contact with Russian president, by the way. Whenever they talk, or this conversation, I'm quite sure was very pleasant and most likely interesting, right? And why should not conversation would be that way? I mean, Russian president will act with whole respect, and he is one of the last heavyweights on a geopolitical scale, right? So he knows how to operate, how to navigate all these fields. And yes, conversations most likely was very nice, pleasant, interesting, as they should be. But it does not mean that these two become best friends, man. So why Trump thought that just because he had nice conversations with Putin, now Putin gonna operate based on whatever Trump will ask him? No, man, it's just too naive, isn't it? If Trump was actually thinking that way, then he's just even more naive than anyone was thinking, right? Putin's actions are based on interests of the Russian Federation. That's it, period. And what Putin personally thinks does not matter. Putin does not put his personal feelings or emotions up front of national interest. He cannot do this, right? And that's why, by the way, he managed to build up a country, right, from 90s when Russia was really, really, really weak, by the way, to nowadays when Russia is against Russia, whole of NATO, by the way, entire collective West is waging war, proxy war, and losing. That's how strong Russia is. And this was possible only if Putin was prioritizing always national interests. That's it, man. Otherwise, country would not be in a position to withstand this pressure, right? Anyways, let's see if we will learn some more. But if Trump was actually thinking that he's going to influence Putin just because they had some good conversations, then I don't know. This is ridiculous, isn't it? But when it comes to US, by the way, it's not just Trump that demands from Europe some top measures to be taken against Russia and against Russian partners, China, India, Brazil, and all the others. But well, they are warmongers, isn't it? In the West, they are warmongers in the West, like Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal and others that probably losing their sleep over topic of Russia, because day in, day out, they are talking about Russia. They are coming up with some new initiatives, how to attack Russia, how to harm Russia. And today is one of those days. Let me give you some news about new ideas of Lindsey Graham. So Republicans pushing now for hardline measures against Russia have come up with their new tactics, tying sanctions to the tying sanctions to the federal government funding bill. The idea came from Senator Lindsey Graham, who has been lobbying for many months to impose secondary sanctions on countries like India and China for supporting Russian economy by linking sanctions to the budget bill. Graham hopes to bypass opposition from the Republican isolationists, gain backing from Democrats, and avoid a clash with Trump, pointing to Trump's recent statements about introducing serious sanctions against Russia and tariffs on China. Graham and their co-sponsor Brian Fitzpatrick framed their proposal as a joint action with Europe, and they might go ahead with this new initiative also. Okay, by the way, if US will actually go ahead with further sanctions and the tariffs against trade partners of the Russian Federation, because when it comes to Russia, I mean, there is not much left really to sanction, right? And when it comes to tariffs, trade between Russia and US is so low that literally nobody freaking cares what kind of tariffs US is going to come up with. It's again US companies that will pay whatever tariffs they're going to introduce potentially, right? And it's US that buys mainly from Russia. I mean, barely anything is imported from US here, right? This is also something to keep in mind. And when it comes to sanctions and tariffs on China, additional sanctions and tariffs on China, India, Brazil, and rest of the BRICS member states or Shanghai Cooperation Organization states or other countries that are cooperating with Russia, well, many experts, by the way, already are saying without any doubts that this sanctioned war and trade war and tariff war that Washington is engaged in is already damaging US big time, right? And US stands on a geopolitical scale, and well, they're gonna endure more damage, I guess, if they will actually go ahead with this crazy moves. I mean, joint action with Europe or whatever other name they're gonna call it, right? But nevertheless, I mean, we all know that there is serious groups of influence in US, neocons, Zionists that are allied with the globalists, right? And they are not letting anybody to, especially in Washington, by the way, to be actually focused on America first. They are trying hard, by the way, to derail any initiatives that actually based on the best interests of American people, because they don't care about American people, man, never did and never will, right? Also, interesting report from TASS news agency. News itself is originated from Bloomberg, that US to call on G7 countries to develop a mechanism to seize Russian assets. I reported this news yesterday, by the way, as well as other news that Russia and China planning to build a clearinghouse to avoid the West. And on this very topic, by the way, we have this report now from RIA Novosti that West could lose 285 billion in their confiscation of Russian assets. Because as you know, dear friends, when West froze Russian assets in the West, Russia reacted in kind, and their Western investments in Russia was also frozen on about same volume. And well, if they will go ahead now with the confiscations of the Russian assets, as allegedly Trump is pushing for and his administration, then, well, Moscow will retaliate again in kind, and all these frozen Western assets, 285 billion, for example, will be, I guess, nationalized, right? So they might use, by the way, either same volume of money or potentially even more, if they will go ahead and openly steal Russian assets. Let me give you some details, dear friends. So the confiscation of frozen Russian assets could cost the West at least 285 billion US dollars. RIA Novosti calculated based on national statistics data. Currently, the G7 and the EU are working on a scheme to seize revenues from frozen Russian reserves to finance 50 billion loan to Kiev. In early September, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen proposed creating a new reparation loan to finance Ukraine from these revenues. At the same time, Western politicians periodically call for direct confiscation of assets in the interests of the Kiev regime. According to the latest estimates, at the end of 2023, the volume of direct investments from the EU and the G7, also Australia, Norway, and Switzerland in the Russian economy amounted to $285 billion. Amount may be significantly higher given their ban on the withdrawal of funds from Russia, which is in effect for unfriendly countries. Officially, data on the blocked assets in Type C accounts is not disclosed. So in reality, actual number could be significantly higher than 285 billion, because these frozen assets do make profits, right? And those profits are also frozen. But unlike European countries, unlike Western countries, Russia is not stealing nothing. These investments, these profits are safe. Russia is just not allowing Western countries to withdraw these assets, right? Thus, European Union accounted for 238 billion investment in Russia. Number is much higher, I believe, of which 145.4 billion belongs to Cyprus. That means, by the way, that through Cyprus worked as an offshore, right, platform for Western investments. They were creating companies in Cyprus due to low taxes there, and investing in Russia through Cyprus. So this is not necessarily Cyprus's money. This is Western European money, right? 21.7 billion is from France, 19.2 billion from Germany, the Netherlands, which does not disclose the full volume of investments in the Russian economy, could potentially own funds worth approximately $20.8 billion. Other major European investors included Italy, 12.6 billion, and Austria, 6.9 billion. The remaining EU members invested another 11.5 billion. Quite interesting details there, isn't it? Among the G7 countries, the largest investor in the Russian economy was the United States. According to the latest available data, American assets in Russia reached approximately $7.7 billion. Next comes Japan, 4.8 billion, Canada, 3.9 billion, UK, 3 billion, Switzerland, and Norway, which usually follow in EU's wake, had assets of 27.5 billion and 43 million respectively. At the end of 2023, Australia invested of 400 million in December last year. So yes, that's some numbers there, friends. So let's see if they will go ahead and confiscate Russian assets completely openly and steal it. Then well, Moscow knows how to retaliate, and the fate of this 285 plus billion Western investments in Russia is in the hands of Western elites, by the way. It's in the hands of Western elites, right? If they're gonna steal Russian assets, then Moscow has every right to retaliate in kind and confiscate Western assets in Russia. Few more news, dear friends. RT is reporting that UN recognizes the state of Palestine without Hamas. Ukraine votes yes, surprisingly for many. US and Israel vote no. So the United Nations General Assembly overwhelmingly supported the resolution on Friday calling for a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine without the involvement of Hamas. Declaration calls for a lasting settlement to the Gaza war on the basis of separate states. It also calls for the militant group Hamas to be disarmed and excluded from governance of the enclave. The non-binding measure passed with 142 votes in favor, 10 against, and the 12 abstentions, with Ukraine supporting it and Israel and US opposing. I mean, who cares what Turkey regime's delegation did, man? Why are these paying that much attention to this? I don't know. But yet again, key point here is, by the way, that this is non-binding measure. This is non-binding measure, so therefore, I don't think Israel will care much about this news, or US, for that matter, US political class, for that matter, that is, I believe, controlled big time by Israel, directly or indirectly, but this is their case, I believe. And I said quite a few times before that based on behavior of Trump and his team, I guess they are compromised for sure. Trump is compromised by Israel. I personally have no doubts about it. And on this very topic, dear friends. So there was a very interesting conversation between podcaster, American podcaster and comedian. I believe he is American. Tim Dalton, his name, if I remember correctly, and one of the most respected journalists in this world, by the way, from Gray Zone, Max Blumenthal, and I can give you, dear friends, a short video of their very interesting conversation, and let's see what Blumenthal has to say.
President of the United States fear for his life?
Yes. Yes. I mean, obviously he fears for his life. And I was told that he feared for his life before the 2 assassination attempts, one coming within a millimeter of striking his head. I mean, let's not forget about that.
But I mean, just to clarify, he doesn't fear for his life because of Ireland.
I mean, I've been told, yes, that Israel is a major source of concern for Trump. I mean, think about it. What would happen
this
if
is
the
our
president
ally.
just if he suspended arms to if he suspended arms to a country that carries out assassinations all across the globe, that specializes in assassinations, that has an entire wing of its intelligence services that conducts assassinations, including with household goods like pagers, would you not be scared? So yes, Trump is scared. And what I learned from this source, who is a Trump insider, someone who talks to who talks to people in the Oval Office, people close to Trump, is that during one of Netanyahu's many visits to the U.S. this year, some figures in his retinue, Israeli agents, placed electronic devices on emergency response Secret Service vehicles. The Secret Service found them and they reported this to the White House. You know, these would be emergency response vehicles that would respond to an incident potentially involving the president.
So, by the way, you see what Blumenthal is saying there, isn't it? That Trump fears, according to his sources, Trump fears for his life, right? And I guess he has reasons to believe that Israel might actually take him out. Israeli Secret Services. And this is, by the way, Max Blumenthal, one of the most respected journalists in this world, right? From a Gray Zone. And I remind you, dear friends, that he is a Jewish. He is a Jewish, and as Aaron Mate is another great journalist from a Gray Zone. And that's why I never, by the way, use words or focus on religion whenever I am talking about Israel. I always say Israeli regime, Israeli society, or whatever, without mentioning the religious factor, because we should not generalize. Am I correct on that? Of course, you would agree with me. We should not generalize, and we should not affiliate all the Jewish people worldwide, by the way, with their crimes that this fascist regime in Israel and fascist Israelis are committing. So we should always distinguish, right? That there is groups of people in Israel, unfortunately majority in my understanding, that were indoctrinated in a fascist ideology, in a supremacist ideology, and they are behaving horribly, right, towards everybody, and they are committing genocide right now as we speak, and for quite a while now, and this world is unable to do anything about it, which is a shame, of course. But on the other hand, we have representatives of the Jewish community, let's say, that, if anything, are one of the greatest representatives of the humanity, I will say, that are in a front row when it comes to fight for the lives of the innocent people in Palestine. So we should never ever generalize, dear friends. This is very important. I just wanted to once again, highlight this moment, as I was doing in the past quite often. So yes, by the way, I mean, I have no reason to doubt single word that coming from Max Blumenthal. He's saying that he thinks, based on information that he's getting from his sources, that Trump is actually fears for his life. And this as a Tim Dillon is the surname of this comedian, or Dalton or Dillon. As he pointed out, Trump fears not for threats that coming from Ireland, for sure. This is something to keep in mind, by the way. I'm 100% convinced that Trump is compromised, and not just Trump, but many other people in U.S. administration. And maybe that's why head of State Department of U.S. now is in Israel, and reports are that he might actually participate. In a ceremony that Netanyahu will do to basically formalize further occupation of the West Bank. So Marco Rubio arrives in Israel for an official visit to meet Netanyahu. Before departing, the Secretary of State stated that Hamas cannot continue to exist if peace in the region is the goal. Well, Hamas to disappear, Israel has to stop committing genocide and occupying land of Palestinians, right? But yet again, these people in U.S. administration, they are compromised, by the way. They will ignore objective reality always, right? God knows what Israel has on them. In case of Trump, it might be Epstein files or something else. In case of Rubio, also something. But these people are compromised, by the way. U.S. is run by Israel, Israeli elites and Zionists, right? But U.S. definitely is not run based on the best interests of the American people. That's for sure. And on the topic of Israel, by the way, well, RT reported, and I did pay attention to this post from Ryan Dawson. Charlie Kirk was assassinated on 10th of September, and since then, government in US did next blocked Epstein file release, passed an amendment that bans Pentagon from boycotting Israel, proposed a bill for Rubio revoke passports for Israel critics. Now they're going to revoke passports, by the way, from people that will dare to criticize Israel. Americans, by the way, that will dare to criticize Israel. How insane is that, man? House also approves 650 million plus for Israel's missile defense, and Marco Rubio is visiting Israel, and allegedly he will participate in that ceremony. Of formalizing yet another occupation of another territories of the West Bank and the final disintegration of the West Bank, basically. So you tell me if there is what kind of connections are between our U.S. political class and Israel and the Zionists, and who runs the show there, really, in U.S. I think they all are compromised, man. They all are compromised. Also, interesting news, dear friends, that Iran's supreme leader's advisor, General Mohsen Razai, stated that Israel will bomb Saudi Arabia and Turkey also after Qatar. So Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Iraq too should expect the regime's warplanes and the bombs before the regime moves against each country in the region one by one. A military coalition must be formed to confront it. Qatar calls emergency talks with all 57 Arab League organizations of Islamic cooperation states. Image of, and you can see on your screen right now, image of IDF strike on Yemen from times of India. And well, Iranian general definitely has a point there. If regional countries want to be a little more safer, creation of some military alliance, defense pact would help in this. But let's be real here. I don't think Zionists, with all the influence that they have in the region or elsewhere in the Western world primarily, or neocons in US, by the way, or globalists in Europe, and their assets all over the world will ever allow Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan, and Iran, and other regional countries, by the way, to be in one military alliance. They will never, ever allow this to happen. It's just not happening, by the way. But the idea itself definitely makes sense because, yes, after bombing Qatar, formerly ally of US, where biggest regional military base is located, US military base, then what is stopping Israel to bomb literally any other country that they want, including Saudi Arabia and Turkey? What stops Israel? Nothing, right? Nothing. Reports are that Qatari air defense systems were shut down by Americans, by the way, while these Israeli planes were entering airspace of Qatar. US shut down formerly Qatar's air defense, that in reality fully depends on US, right? So idea understandable that this general is talking about, Mohsen Rezai, Iranian general, but this idea of creating defensive alliance in region is not gonna be realized because it's not gonna, West will never allow this to happen. I think, and that's why most likely Iran will go ahead to create a nuke, because we all see latent nuclear deterrence not enough to deter Israel, and there was a hope in Tehran, I believe, that if they will enrich uranium up to 60+%, they will gain this latent nuclear deterrent, and no one would mess around Iran. But it did not work. Clearly, they need nukes now. And they will go ahead. I have no doubts about it. They will go ahead and build a nuke not now. And that's why I think Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, stated that all enriched uranium of Iran is under their bombed deep underground, in bombed and destroyed by Israel-US facilities. So now, while saying so, Iranian specialists can actually move around this enriched uranium and do what they might have planned there, and that is atomic bombs. They will. I have no doubts about it, because latent deterrent is clearly not working, and RIA Novosti is reporting also, and many other media outlets, that there was a massive demonstrations of people in UK, by the way, in London included, right? Massive demonstrations of people that were basically, in many media outlets here in Russia, were called patriots of the United Kingdom, right? All the very same people were framed very differently by all sorts of neolibs and all sorts of globalist so-called media outlets. I mean, some Western so-called media even called these demonstrators, fascists and Nazis. Why are they fascist? Just because? Why this guy that you see on your screen is a fascist? Just because he is wearing Union Jack? It's his country's flag, man. He has every right to be, proud of his country. He has every right to want to, preserve his country, his culture, right? And to wear Union Jack anywhere he wants. What's wrong with that? I mean, really. Anyways, let me give you some details. According to some reports, there was more than 1 million people that participate in all these demonstrations. According to some other reports, about 175, 200,000, different numbers. But anyways, let me give you some details. Foreign media outlets on Saturday evening covered the mass protests of the and yet again right-wing supporters in London. These are not right-wing or left-wing, by the way. These are just people, right, that fed up with their craziness that they see in their own country, pointing to a record number of participants for such actions, consideration of the issue of national identity and the attraction of the international attention to the situation. Participants in the Uniting the Kingdom rally by right-wing activist Tommy Robinson gathered in Russell Square on Saturday, and from there headed towards the government quarter of Whitehall. Many people, and this is London, right? Many people carried the national flag of England with the cross of the St. George and the Union Jack. The demonstrators shouted slogans against the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. They criticized their government's immigration policy and what they see as restrictions on freedom of speech. Robinson said that the millions of people come out to their demonstration. The organizers noted that the marches chanted the name of the murdered American conservative politician and activist Charlie Kirk. He posted footage showing that some demonstrators came with his portrait. At the same time, small counter-protest took place in London. Also, left-wing activists spoke out against the restrictions on immigration. The Standard noted, Standard is a British media outlet, isn't it? Noted that the authorities sent about 1,000 police officers to maintain order during the protests. There were clashes with the police. Also, allegedly, I have not seen videos of clashes, but maybe there were some. Tensions have increased due to a counter-demonstration in which around 5,000 people took part, writes the Spanish newspaper Mundo. British Guardian noted that event attracted a record number of people, with the number of participants far exceeding police expectations, leading to tense and sometimes violent clashes. Unite the Kingdom rally came as nationalism rose in UK. A far-right party took the lead in the polls, and the murder of US conservative activist Charlie Kirk. People descended on British capital on Saturday in what is expected to be the country's biggest right-wing protest in decades. US TV channel NBC reported. All these names, by the way, name calling is coming from Western media, and if you notice, it's so-called liberal media. They are trying to distract people, they are trying to divide people still, right? Create tensions among different groups of people while calling these protesters, for example, right-wing and extreme right and this and that and fascists. I mean, what the hell? Why are you going to call someone a fascist if he wants to protect their culture that that person grew up in, or the country that that person grew up? I mean, why that is a fascism? Fascism is a very different thing, right? And it's not about left and right. I think left liberals should love their and protect their societies in a very same way as right-wing people, right? Because it's their country, for God's sake, and their society. So yes, there was a big demonstrations, by the way, and after all, for a reason, quite a number of experts are saying that these Western European countries, including UK, are on the edge of even civil war. That's how very important issues has been neglected by local elites, local authorities. And while these important issues, important for public issues, have not been addressed, of course, tensions are rising, and at one point, some uncontrolled processes actually might take place. I mean, it's a possibility. And dear friends, that's about it for new segment for today. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully it was informative and interesting. And by the way, if so, please like the video and leave some commentary. This might help to deal with this tremendously aggressive algorithm. And dear friends, there was and now community chat is beginning. I will join community chat, but before that, let me highlight there was two donations, dear friends, and I believe we have one new premium subscriber on Rumble. So let me highlight this, and I will remind you, dear friends, that this is not just ordinary news update, but big community chat, traditional Sunday community chat, and fundraising. Goal of fundraising is to reach $200 for next week, so that I would work on this project with little less stress, because with donations you just don't know. One day you might have some donations, other day not, but these fundraisings do help with that. And let me, as I said, let me highlight, dear friends, first donations. So there was one donation on a Boosty, one donation on a Rumble for this moment, and we have one new member on Rumble also, as a premium subscriber. So let me highlight this too. Just a minute, dear friends. It would not take long. So I already highlighted, dear friends, that yesterday there was a late evening. There was donation from Susan, 1,600 rubles on a Boosty, and I'm counting this donation from Susan also as a part of today's fundraising. So thank you very much, Susan, once again for a $20 donation yesterday, and also, dear friends, today there was a what? I just copied the files, and for whatever reason, oh, I can see now. Okay, so let me highlight this donation on a Boosty, also from Alexander G. Thank you very much, Alexander, for 802 ruble donation. It's $10 donation, dear friends. Thank you very much, Alexander. And comment from Alexander is appreciate your work. Thank you very much. And also, dear friends, donation on Boosty. Dimodos Cutter, thank you very much for your donation, $2 donation. And their comment is, thank you for their honest reporting. Thank you very much for your donation and for your active participation in our community. You are very helpful. Your comments always are very informative, and messages. Thank you very much. And also, dear friends, as I said, we have a new member as a premium subscriber on Rumble. And let me highlight this also. So Miss Me with Dieter gifted one subscription to Levang Dad's Opinion. So we have new member as a premium subscriber. Thank you very much, Miss Me with Dieter. I appreciate your support and attention. Thank you all, dear friends. And let's have a chat now. If there will be any super chat during the as long as this stream is on, any donation, of course, I will highlight it. If anyone will subscribe to my Patreon page during the stream or after the stream, by the way, I will also highlight that in next updates, either today, or in next updates. And so, yes, I see Nikos's question, dear friends. Let's start with this question. I've been reading about Russia's relationships with the ex-Soviet countries, and most are loyal. After 2022, Kazakhstan seemed very distant towards Russia. How are Kazakhstan-Russian relations now? Well, relationships are okay, I will say. Relationships are okay. Kazakhstan, due to its geography, due to its history since gaining independence after Soviet Union dissolved, well, Kazakhstan had some hard times, right? And due to past experience, Astana, new capital of Kazakhstan, is trying to come up with some balanced politics, not just to balance relationships with Russia and the West, but also with China, by the way. And for example, I don't know how many members of our community know, but I believe, if I remember correctly, current president of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, have spent quite a lot of time, many years in China, right? I believe he was representing Kazakhstan in China. And he has some links with, some connections with the China also, which is important. So these three centers, by the way, West on one side, Russia and China, of course, are interested in, have some interests in regards to Kazakhstan, and Astana has to navigate, right, in the way that will be most profitable for Kazakhstan. Let's say this way. Relationships between Astana and Moscow may not be on the best level, right? But it's not on the worst level. It's a good working relationships. I am struggling to call Astana or Kazakhstani leadership as truly friendly towards Russia, but I would not call them a hostile either. So therefore, relationships are good. And after all, I remind you, dear friends, that a couple of years ago, when there was attempt of coup d'etat or regime change in Kazakhstan, that was orchestrated by the West. CSTO countries under the Russian leadership acted very rapidly and deployed forces and stabilized the situation, and basically saved the country from descending into a civil war, right? And so, as you can see, probably only successful operation of CSTO since the creation of this organization, that deployment into Kazakhstan and stabilization of the situation there. So yes, relationships are good. Relationships are good, but as always, there is a risk that situation might change. West, I believe, Western so-called elites, globalists and neocons, they are planning to at one point destabilize Central Asian republics, especially ones that are bordering with China, and then to create uncontrolled territories on the border with China, so that they will deploy all the terrorists that they trained in Idlib province of Syria for many years, right, to infiltrate China and destabilize the northern western regions of China, right? So there is that risk too, and I think Astana understands what is going on, and therefore I will say Astana more closer to Russia and China than to West. And when it comes to West, there is also different factions in the West, isn't it? When it comes to Astana, Kazakhstan's energy sector, US is heavily involved there, right? And British aristocracy, British elites would probably like to replace US, and I guess that's why they authorized Kiev regime, or ordered Kiev regime, to strike on Caspian pipeline consortium infrastructure that carries Kazakhstani oil, by the way. Right, and in that project, U.S. companies, including Chevron, I believe, are involved. So there is also tensions between certain groups in the West that are one way or another involved in Kazakhstan too, in energy field and others. So yes, it's a complex issue, but to answer shortly, I mean, answer is already too long, but. Kazakhstan and Russia, we are doing okay, but we are doing okay. relationships are on a good working level, and the politicians officially call the relationships to be great and their countries to be strategical partners. So I am a bit skeptical, or much more skeptical in my estimation of the actual relationships between the countries that politicians of two countries are. And also, Nikos, I see a comment from Svetlana Vladimirovna. Thank you, Svetlana, for a nice comment there. We had a good exchange of opinions yesterday, and we agree to disagree on certain points, which is great, by the way. That's why this community chat is good. We can sometimes argue about some stuff, let's just always be respectful and friendly, and otherwise we can discuss and argue about anything. It's all good, right? And also Nikos is commenting, how did those drones reach central Russia, and what does this mean if Russia has no more safe space for its military production? Well, Nikos, I did spoke about this drone topic quite a few times before. And, no air defense system in this world is capable of, even the best one that Russia has, by the way, integrated air defense system, is capable of intercepting 100% drones at 100% of time, right? It's just technically not possible, especially when we are talking about biggest country in the world. If you think if US was engaged in if Mexico was used as a proxy by certain groups and waged a war against the US, you think US air defense systems would be able to intercept 100% drones? No. I mean, US air defense is so weak compared to Russia that I guess majority of drones would actually reach target in case of US, right? And no place in US would be safe because, yet again, there is evolution of the drone technologies, isn't it? And drones are capable to fly longer and longer distances, even over 1,000 kilometers. In some cases, maybe longer than that. So therefore, unfortunately, some drones always, as long as this conflict continues, some drones, there will be always risk that some drones will manage to bypass air defense systems and strike some facility somewhere in central Russia or northern Russia or eastern Russia, southern Russia, somewhere. Unfortunately, that kind of stuff happens, right? And I'm reporting about it. But you are saying, you are touching up on a much bigger subject here, which is a military production. And you are assuming, if I am understanding correctly, that Russia is unable to safely produce military stuff, which is not, which is a mistake, to say the least, right? Because if you have not seen facilities of military industrial complex, well, how should that explain what these manufacturing plants are, man? It's kilometers and kilometers longer facilities. Let's take Uralvagon Zavod, manufacturing plant that produces Russian tanks and there are many other military equipment, right? Heavily armored military equipment. To actually halt production of weapons in Uralvagon Zavod, you have to use nukes. This is the only way to actually stop production there. That's how big the factory is. So, I mean, to have an better understanding what this Russian military industrial complex facilities look like. To stop manufacturing on Uralvagon Zavod, you have to use nuclear weapon. Otherwise, you would not be able to do much. You just cannot. Not just with a drone, by the way, one or two drones, but with anything. You just cannot stop production there. So I think your assumption is mistaken, Nikos. One drone that hits something in some industrial area, not gonna halt no production of anything, right? That's how it is. And like a few days ago, I even shared information that was coming from hostile side, that this year alone, Russia will produce about 250, according to enemy estimations, by the way, we will produce at least 250 new tanks, more than 1,000 new infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, and so on. That's a new tech, new military equipment, by the way. We should keep in mind that simultaneously, Russia had a vast, maybe vastest stockpile of all sorts of weapon systems, tanks, armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles, tens of thousands of them, right? Tens of thousands of them, literally. And many companies here in Russia are working to do modernization of these complexes, old complexes. They are basically using basic frame of the vehicles because it's a heavily armored frame, right? That time cannot do much, really. And new equipment is put in. And it takes much less time to create a battle-ready tank this way, right, than to build from the scratches. So if Russia is producing 250 new tanks on Ural Vagon Zavod, let's say, then I guess twice, 3, 4 times more tanks, for example, have been produced due to this modernization process from old, from old stockpile, right? And trust me, no drone, by the way, not 1, not 2, not 5, not 10 drones that are accidentally one day might reach some place and strike. They're not gonna stop military manufacturing. It's just not happening, We are not talking about some small family owner business, right? When we're talking about weapons production, we are talking about vast areas, right? With dozens of buildings in many cases, dozens of buildings that goes for kilometers long, by the way. So how are you going to stop production of weapons there? Only way to stop such a factory to produce anything is to nuke it. And at least for now, as far as we know, West did not officially at least provided Kyiv regime with the nukes, right? So I don't know, maybe you heard some propaganda of the West that Kyiv regime is influencing weapons production here in Russia. And some companies no longer able to produce weapons, but it's not true. It's just simply not true. That's it, man. And also, dear friends, there was a donation on Rumble, dear friends. So let me highlight a super chat from Rumble. Viper, thank you very much for a $20 donation, and their super chatter comment from Viper is, I hope Russia and China helps Iran with their missile defense systems. I think both countries will provide Iran with their weapon systems. Probably process is already underway, but I think only way, realistically speaking, only way that Iran can actually protect itself is to go nuclear. And with this, neither Russia, neither China will help. Russia and China are party of non-proliferation treaty, and neither Moscow or Beijing will break this treaty. So we cannot provide assistance to Iran in terms of helping them build the nuclear weapons. They have to figure it out on their own. But this is the only way they can actually defend themselves, because against Israel and against US, if Israel was fighting alone, that's a little different story. But Israel is not fighting alone. Israel is fighting with the assistance of US, right? Sometimes indirect, sometimes even direct, as we see recently. And no volume of weapons gonna deter Israel and US to attacking Iran, but nuclear weapons might. So I think even though I'm quite sure Russia and China probably are providing assistance with conventional weapons to Iran. Most likely Tehran will go nuclear, and in this regard, neither Russia or China are gonna help them. They have to figure out how to build nuclear warheads on their own. Maybe North Korea will help. I mean, maybe North Korea will help. Possibility there. Possibility, but if they have no nukes, by the way, no amount of weapons will deter Israel and the US from attacking again. Probably you will agree with me on that. Thank you very much, Viper, again for your donation and super chat. Thank you. And let's continue with the chat, dear friends. As always, capital letters and capital Q at least will be helpful to spot the question easier, dear friends. Thank you all once again for joining this live stream. Gracie Knoll is asking, are NATO drones launched against Kaliningrad Oblast? I have not seen reports on that yet. If I am not mistaken, I have never heard about any drone launches against Kaliningrad region. To strike Kaliningrad, dear friends, those drones have to cross Poland. They have to cross Polish airspace to enter Kaliningrad. Or you can choose another route. Let's say if drones are launched from Kiev-controlled territory, I mean, there is only two ways, right? Either drone's going to cross Polish airspace, then enter Kaliningrad region, or drones have to cross Belarus, then Lithuania, right? And then enter Kaliningrad region. Let me check right now, dear friends. I think that's how it is there. Geography. So from one side, from western side, let's say, Polish airspace has to be crossed. From northern western side, airspace of Belarus, and then one of those Baltic Chihuahuas, I believe it's Lithuania. Let me check right now, dear friends, to give you a precise answer. Yes, it is Lithuania, by the way. I was remembering correctly. So that's why maybe drone strikes on Kaliningrad are not happening. Because if drone enters Kaliningrad region from either Lithuania or Poland, that's act of war, by the way, from these countries, right? And there might be some consequences for that. So that's the answer. If I remember correctly, there was no drone strikes on Kaliningrad region, at least for now. Correct me if I'm wrong, dear friends, but Nikos is also asking, have you heard about son of CIA deputy director who gave his life for Russia? Yes, I reported about it. On several occasions, I believe. Yes, I know, and medal was given to this fighter, and this medal was delivered to his family. So recently, I have read news about that too. So this is true story, by the way. Son of a deputy of acting deputy of a director of CIA was fighting alongside Russian troops, fighting for Russia. Believed 100% that Russia was on right side of history, and he gave his life for his beliefs, and he is a hero, by the way. What can I say about it? It is sad that he's dying, but so many people died, by the way, in this proxy war that West is waging against us, you know. Let's scroll. My apologies if I will miss your question, dear friends. But I'm oriented on capital Q or capital letters to spot a question or the commentary that directed at me. Michael Kennedy is commenting, if Ukraine ceases to exist, EU loses everything. I think EU is finished anyways, either way. No matter how this Ukrainian crisis will resolve, I think EU is finished. It's only a matter of time. Total downfall of this quasi-state creation that EU has become. Originally, it should be economical union that should make trade and the business easier between the countries, but eventually it transformed into this quasi-state, right? And it resembles the worst of the worst of the Soviet Union, by the way. You know, nothing best, nothing good that Soviet Union had, but only worst of the worst that Soviet Union also had. That's what EU is looks like for me, and I think many people will agree on that. I remind you, dear friends, that you can, this is a fundraising stream, big community chat and fundraising stream, and you can donate if you want to support through PayPal platform, Boosty platform. Also, you can subscribe to my Patreon page or page on Boosty. Everything will count, of course, as a supporter. And there also during the stream, that is now, you can use super chat feature or rant feature on Rumble, and also become a premium subscriber there. Alexander G is commenting, Qatar, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, all these countries who outsource their military to USA are as exposed as Qatar. I agree with you, absolutely. You know, you are on point, Alexander, 100%. All these countries are vulnerable because you know, they are completely dependent on US, and US can shut down their military assets whenever they want, right? And the rumors are that that's exactly what US did with their air defense in Qatar, while Israeli fighter jets were entering the airspace. So those countries gonna begin realizing, even though they are under heavy influence of the Western, those Gulf states, I think they just don't have much choice but to wake up and begin distancing themselves slowly, but distancing themselves from the Western towards the emerging multipolar world, and to diversify their investments, their assets, right? Most of their assets are in the Western financial and the banking system, so vulnerable, right? Anytime collective West can through their hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars that they have in volume in the West, very same as they did with Russian investments, right? They can froze it and then just confiscate it. So I think Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, all the others, they have no choice but to, little by little, not to scare too much their Western partners, began withdrawing their assets from the West and they're transferring to the East. And you know, once they will withdraw a certain percentage, once most of it, like 60, let's say 60+%, will be somewhere else, not in the Western financial and their banking system, at that point they will probably gain some independence, right? Opportunity to act little independently. But until then, I don't think they will even try. Some strong statements, yes, but actions, no, because they will lose everything in that case. Oh, interesting comment. Buscello Mazzaretti is commenting, I deactivated the Rumble about 3 years ago. Ironically, they have zero free speech. You know, I just recently learned from one of the members of our community that very significant percentage of shares in Rumble is in hands of Bongino, deputy of FBI director. I did not knew that, by the way. I did not knew that. So if deputy of FBI chief, this Bongino, is one of the biggest shareholders of Rumble, can we assume that certain forces have direct access to Rumble and their influence and can manipulate what kind of videos to be highlighted or recommended to community, what kind of videos to be suppressed? I think yes. So therefore, I see true in your statement that when it comes to free speech, Rumble is definitely questionable platform, no any less than YouTube. I'm afraid. If Bongino actually has 20% and 20 or whatever the percentage is, big share, by the way, in Rumble, and who knows who else also has some influence there, right? YouTube might be a bit worse still than Rumble, but yes, I find difficult to reach wide audience on both platforms. At least on Rumble, my channel is monetized, so I cannot complain. At least they did that. But to reach wide audience, I find it very difficult, man, on both platforms. From tomorrow, I will start again publishing short clips from my first morning's live streams, really short ones. I mean, I'm going to try to make like maybe 3, 5, sometimes could be more, like 3-minute, 5-minute, maybe 10-minute shortcuts about 1-2 news, right? So that maybe headlines and the thumbnails will do some work, and some of the videos will manage to bypass algorithm barriers and reach wide audience. Hopefully it will work. Otherwise, it's difficult, man. It's difficult, especially for my channel, because I'm not just sharing the news from Russia, but I am pro-Russian, absolutely, no doubts about it, and they're based in Russia. My channel is based in Russia. It's so I'm primary target for and people like me and their channels like mine, primary target for algorithms, right? So yeah. And dear friends, when it comes to some updates that I do on this project, yesterday and today also I did published links to the news, most of the news that I shared in a news segment. So whenever you want, and I will continue to do so, and whenever you will want to read the entire news that I mentioned during the news segment, you can go through into description box, see the list. Most likely you will find the news that you want. I'm publishing headline from the news report and also link to the news report. So hopefully this will become useful for some members of community that maybe want to read their whole news or to maybe share the information with others, right? So you will have a link of the news. Nidish Kumar is commenting, Levan, do you think that Colombian mercenaries has infiltrated into Venezuela already? Of course, not just Colombian mercenaries, by the way. I'm quite sure certain U.S. special forces units are also in Venezuela and will provide targeting and will conduct some sabotage operations in Venezuela when order comes. So 100%. I mean, Colombian mercenaries, I don't think they're going to be much issue for Venezuela's defense force, but U.S. special forces, well, they are very capable ones, so they can do some crazy damage for sure. But yes, I expect a significant number of hostiles already to be on our Venezuelan territory, hostiles to Venezuela. Please, I see some unpleasant exchange of opinions between two members of community. Please, dear friends, let's be very respectful to each other. Otherwise, I will have no option but to block. If there is a hostility towards from one person towards another, let's not be hostile towards each other. By the way, we are not, none of us are enemies for each other, right? So let's have a conversation in a decent manner. Otherwise, I will have no option but to do something, right? I'm scrolling now, dear friends, looking for a question that might be directed to me. Also a question from GLGL or GLG. What do you think about Gorbachev? Did he was a traitor? Yes. Answer is straight answer there. Yes, he was a traitor. He and the Shevardnadze, by the way, foreign minister of Soviet Union, that before being appointed as a foreign minister was head of Georgian Soviet Socialist Republic. Both of them are traitors, and many others in the leadership of late Soviet Union. For sure. Traitors, by the way, disgrace of humanity. That's my personal take, of course. This is not an jury. I'm not a how you said expert in law, right? And Gorbachev was never accused in a treason officially, right? See, he was never convicted for committing treason. But as a personal opinion, I think he was an asset of the West. I don't know when he was recruited by the West. He or Shevardnadze in late 70s, in 80s, or when, but they were assets of the West. I'm quite sure about it. They were traitors of the Soviet people. And blood of so many innocent killed individuals is on their hands. Because remember, I mean, all the bloodshed that you see on the area of former Soviet Republic is due to collapse of the country, right? Soviet Union, there was every reason to reform country without destroying it. And neither Gorbachev, neither anyone else from that, from so-called leadership with a few exceptions, by the way, with a few exceptions, but neither Gorbachev, neither Shevardnadze, neither many others there try to actually reform country in a way that would not destroy it, right? It was intentional destruction of the Soviet Union, I think. And then there was an attempt, by the way, towards the end, when there was barely any chances to save anything, there was an attempt by militaries to remove Gorbachev, remove Yeltsin. GKCP was against Gorbachev, right? So many years has passed, by the way. There was an attempt, by the way, to do something about it, but it was just too late. It did not work. It did not work. So, yes, answer to your question, is Gorbachev a traitor? Yes, he is a traitor of people. Lynn, please, can I say to this member of our community, BEODZ, and also to Bohari, not to spam, please. Just exchange opinion with members. If you have a question, ask the question, but please don't spam. I mean, it just distracts for no reason. Nidish Kumar is also commenting that we are getting Orion drones. Oh, really? That's interesting. Indian Air Force will get Russian Orion drones. That's quite interesting. I did not knew about it. Maybe I missed some report on that. That's quite interesting. And these Orion drones, by the way, they are proving their capabilities. I mean, they are good in precise strikes. Right? They are quite good in precise strikes, and did play significant role in destroying enemy military equipment. So, and with all their experience, that will be used to modernize these drones and make them even more lethal. Well, of course, this will give Indian militaries additional strike power. So good news. And Orion drones, dear friends, for members of our community who don't know what this drone is, it looks like Reaper, little bit. It's a big drone, big strike drone, relatively bigger. Maybe not as big as Reaper is, US Reaper drone, but it's a quite big one too. That can carry precise weapons to take out So, dear friends, I scrolled there all the way to the end there, and interesting. Bastello Maserati is saying, what is their third in S? Союз Советских Социалистических Республик, it's a Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. But union in Russian is Soyuz. So that's third C for you, right? Third S. So it's Союз Советских Социалистических Республик, SSSR. Republics themselves were called SSR, right? For example, Georgia was a G or GSSR, Georgia Soviet Socialist Republic. Republics and Russia, although on the other hand, there was RSFSR. So okay, dear friends, I guess this is it for today's live stream. Okay, Nidish Kumar is commenting. Levan, how did fundraiser go? Please keep schedule stable. It's hurting your viewership. Oh, I'm gonna try. So at least in the morning or first live streams will be at 12. I think 12 is working better. Although if majority of the community will convince me that 11 is more convenient for them, then of course I will do on 11. Second updates in the evening, it's hard to tell when I be able to publish the live stream or start the live stream or publish some walk and talk video. But in the morning, by local time, by Moscow time, first updates will be always either on 11 or 12. And when it comes to today's fundraising, well, yesterday, late evening, we had a $20 donation. Today, Ayn, can you tell me overall number of donations today? Okay, that's with yesterday's donation or without? With yesterday's $20 donation, we managed to raise $57 during this stream. You know, it might not be target $200 as I was hoping for, but nevertheless, it's assistance from the community, right, to maintain this project. So I'm truly grateful to everyone who donated. So thank you all, dear friends. Thank you all for donations, for attention, for your time. And one question that I just spotted, dear friends, Alexandria Black is commenting. My Georgia is over twice as larger, and not sure we got a better far low. Thank you for your comment, Alexandria. And that's it, dear friends. That's it. Thank you very much for your assistance. Have a wonderful day and take care. See you tomorrow.